Hi friends, welcome back to Miss Laurie's Stories. Today I'm reading The Spiffiest Giant in Town by Julia Donaldson. I always ask my friends, what's a giant? Do you know? We can look at the picture for some help. So I see giant shoes and giant legs and pants. So what's a giant? Is it a person who's really small or is it a person who's really big? Yeah, super big, so big, huge, ginormous, enormous, gigantic. A giant. So let's read about the spiffiest giant in town. George was a giant, the scruffiest giant in town. He always wore the same pair of old brown sandals and the same old patched up gown. I wish I wasn't the scruffiest giant in town, he said sadly. What does scruffy mean? They keep saying that George is the scruffiest giant in town. So let's look at the picture of George. Look at his gown. Look at his hair. Well, let me ask you, do you think scruffy means dirty or do you think it means clean? Do you think it means new or does it mean old? Yeah, look at George. His hair's all messy. His gown has patches and it's clearly a little brown and has dirty spots. So scruffy means dirty and old, just like his gown and his clothes. So my friends, poor George. He's scruffy. He says, I wish I wasn't the scruffiest giant in town. Let's see what happens next. But one day George noticed a new shop. It was full of spiffy clothes. So he bought a spiffy shirt, a spiffy pair of pants, a spiffy belt, a spiffy striped tie, some spiffy socks with diamonds on the side, and a pair of spiffy shiny shoes. Now I'm the spiffiest giant in town, he said proudly. My friends, now we learned what scruffy is. It means old and dirty, not clean, like messy, like George's hair. Now I wonder, what does spiffy mean? He just bought all these new clothes at the new shop. We keep calling them spiffy. So spiffy is the opposite of scruffy. So scruffy means dirty, messy, not clean. Old, spiffy means new, clean, not messy, like well kept. And how does that make George feel buying all his new spiffy clothes? Happy and proud. He's feeling really good about himself. Sometimes new clothes can do that. George left his old clothes behind in the shop. He was about to go home when he heard a sound. On the sidewalk stood a giraffe who was sniffing sadly. What's the matter? Asked George. It's my neck, said the giraffe. It's so very long and so very cold. I wish I had a long, warm scarf. Do you think George could help the giraffe? The giraffe says, I'm so cold. My neck is so long. Let's see what happens. Cheer up, said George, and he took off his striped tie. It didn't match my socks anyway, he said, as he wound it around and around the giraffe's neck. It made a wonderful scarf. Thank you, said the giraffe. Wow, wasn't that so friendly and so kind of George the giant? His friend the giraffe was feeling cold, so he gave him his tie and wrapped it around his neck to be a scarf. The scarves keep your neck warm when it's cold. And friends, I'm going to teach us how to say scarf in sign language because the giraffe really wished that he had a scarf. So we're going to take out our two hands and kind of like you're going to chop something. You're going to put one right on top of the other. Hi-ya, chop. And now we're going to take the hand that's on top and wrap it around her head and neck. Like you're wrapping around a scarf. Scarf. Nice, let's do it one more time together. Scarf. Nice. As George strode toward home, he sang to himself. My tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe, but look me up and down, I'm the spiffiest giant in town. Oh, he's still so happy. He's wearing some of his spiffy clothes. He helped a friend. George came to a river. On a boat stood a goat who was bleating loudly. Bah! What's the matter? Asked George. It's my sail, said the goat. It blew away in a storm. Bah! I wish I had a strong new sail for my boat. Bah! Oh, poor goat. He lost the sail to his sailboat. Do you think George the Giant could help? He did help the giraffe. Let's see. Cheer up, said George, and he took off his new white shirt. It kept coming untucked anyway, he said as he tied it to the mast of the goat's boat. It made a magnificent sail. Thank you, said the goat. Wow, that was so kind of George. He took off his new spiffy shirt and gave it to the goat to be its sail for its boat. Thank you, George. You're so kind and friendly, so thoughtful, so helpful. My friends, let's become the sailboat. I love boat pose. All right, so for boat pose, we're going to stay on the floor or come down to the floor if you're not there already. And we always start in boat pose with our knees bent and your feet pressed into the floor. And I always just put my hands behind me. It doesn't matter which way your fingers are facing. Whatever's comfortable, whatever feels good for you. And once you're not wiggly, you're still, we're going to raise your feet first. And when you feel good, like, oh, you're not wiggling all around, you're nice and still, raise your hands. Nice. Make sure your back stays up off the floor. Because if you look like this, that's not a boat pose. You're just laying down. You're not really working much. So bring your boats up. I always tell my friends, if this is too easy, you can always straighten up or just stay like this. And now I want a sailboat for the goat. So raise one arm to be your sail. You can always switch arms. Or my friends always love two sails. Nice. Even though we're in a sailboat, we can still sing. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Splash! Those are awesome sailboats. I love going sailing with my friends. Let's see what happens next. George strode on, singing to himself. My tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe. My shirt's on a boat is a sail for a goat. But look me up and down, I'm the spiffiest giant in town. George came to a tiny ruined house. Beside the house stood a white mouse with lots of baby mice. They're all squeaking. Can I hear my mice squeak? Squeak, 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 squeak. Nice mouse noises. Can I hear it again? Squeak, 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 squeak. Wow. I feel like there are real mice around here. What's the matter? Asked George. It's our house, squeaked the mother mouse. It burned down and now we have nowhere to live. I wish we had a nice new house. Oh, Mother Mouse said that the mice's house burned down. That is so sad. Do you think George can help? He's been so helpful to the giraffe and the goat. What about the mouse? Let's see. Cheer up, said George, and he took off one of his shiny shoes. It was giving me blisters anyway, he said, as the mouse and her baby scrambled inside. The shoe made a perfect home for them. Thank you, they squeaked. And my friends, let's go into mouse pose for all the mice. All right, so for mouse pose, we're going to start with our our bottoms down on our feet. Nice. And we're going to put our head, our forehead, gently on the floor. And you're going to leave your hands for mouse pose right at your sides. And let's squeak like a mouse. Squeak, 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 squeak. Take a deep breath in and squeak one more time. Squeak, 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 squeak. That was so great. I love hearing all my squeak. And now let's keep reading the story. George had to hop along the road now, but he didn't mind. As he hopped, he sang to himself. All right, so my red room friends know, when we get to this part of the story, we're going to hop just like George. So let me just move this up a little so you can see me hopping along like George and the Giant. Let's just practice hopping on one foot. Nice. I'm going to switch feet. So I'm going to tell some of my friends that this is really tricky to balance. You can jump on two. But try to be like George and hop on one. And we'll sing. My tie's a scarf for a cold giraffe. My shirt's on a boat as a sail for a goat. My shoe is a house for a little white mouse. But look me up and down on the Spiffiest Giant in town. Nice hopping. Let's keep reading. George came to a campsite. Beside a tent stood a fox who was crying. Oh, if the fox is crying, how must he be feeling? Really sad. When we're sad, we cry, and that's okay. I think we should do some boo-hoo breaths for the sad, crying fox. That's fox in sign language. You make letter F, and then you put that little circle, the hole, over your nose, and wiggle it for the fox. All right, so do a boo-hoo breath. We're going to breathe in through our nose, and we're going to let out some boo-hoo sounds and pretend to cry. So let's breathe in first. Let's do it one more time. Ready? Poor fox. What's the matter? Asked George. It's my sleeping bag, said the fox. I dropped it in a puddle. I wish I had a warm, dry sleeping bag. So when you go camping, you usually sleep in a tent outside, and you'd use a sleeping bag as like a big blanket or like an outside bed. So you'd get inside and zip up the sides. It's really cozy. Would you want to sleep in something wet? Would you want to sleep in a wet blanket or a wet bed? No, that's not very comfortable. Do you think George could help? I wonder what he might do for the fox. Any ideas? What do you think? Let's see. Cheer up, said George, and he took off one of his socks with diamonds on the sides. It was tickling my toes anyway, he said, as the fox snuggled into it. Made a very fine sleeping bag. Thank you, said the fox. George hopped on, singing to himself. Aren't we friends? Let's hop along with George again. Here we go. Let's stand up nice and tall. George is a giant. Let's hop. My tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe. My shirt's on a boat as a sail for a goat. My shoe is a house for a little white mouse. One of my socks is a bed for a fox. But look me up and down, I'm the Spiffiest Giant in town. George came to a big, squishy bog. My friends always ask, Miss Laurie, what's a bog? I'm going to show you in the picture what the bog is. A bog is just mud. Bog is another way to say mud. So Julia Donaldson, the author of this book and many other popular books like Rube on the Broom and The Gruffalo, she's from England. She's British. So they use some different language than we do. So instead of mud, they call it bog. So it's fun to learn some new words. So beside the bog stood a dog who was howling. Oh! "What's the matter?" asked George. "It's this bog," said the dog. "I need to get across, but I keep getting stuck in the mud. I wish there was a safe, dry path." Do you think George will help the dog? Any ideas to what he might use to help the dog? Let's see. "Cheer up," said George. He took off his spiffy new belt. "It was squeezing my tummy anyway," he said, as he laid it down over the bog. It made an excellent path. "Thank you," said the dog. The wind started to blow, but George didn't mind. He hopped on, singing to himself. All right, let's hop with George. And we're going to sing our song. My tie's a scarf for a cold giraffe. My shirt's on a boat as a sail for a goat. My shoe's a house for a little white mouse. One of my socks is a bed for a fox. My belt helped a dog who was crossing a bog, but my pants are falling down." What happened? Why are George's pants falling down? Do you know what he gave the dog to help him get across the bog? His belt, his spiffy new belt. And belts help keep your pants on. Sometimes pants can be a little too big on your waist, and they really could fall down. Oh, look at George. So silly. "My pants are falling down. I'm the coldest giant in town." Suddenly George felt sad and shivery and not at all spiffy. He stood on one foot and thought, "I'll have to go back to the shop and buy some more clothes," he decided. He turned around and hopped all the way back to the shop. But when he got there, it was closed. Oh no, the store's not open. "Oh no," said George. He sat down onto the sidewalk and a tear ran down his nose. My friends, now how is George feeling? Yeah, super sad. He's cold. He doesn't have any clothes. He felt as sad as all the animals he had met on his way home. Then out of the corner of his eye, he saw a bag with something familiar poking out of the top. George took a closer look. "My gown!" he yelled. "My dear old gown! And sandals!" George put them on. They felt wonderfully comfortable. He feels cozy and warm and happy, even though his clothes are old. "I'm the coziest giant in town," he cried, and he danced back home along the road. So, did George need spiffy new clothes to feel happy? No, he is just as happy in his scruffy clothes. Do you remember what did make him really happy, though? It has something to do with all those sad animals. Yeah, when he helped the animals, that always left George feeling really happy. Let's see what happens next. We're almost done with the story. Outside his front door stood all the animals he had helped. They were carrying an enormous present. "Come on, George," they said. "Open it." George untied the ribbon. Inside was a beautiful gold paper crown and a card. "Look inside the card, George," said the animals. George put the crown on his head and opened the card. Inside it said, "You gave your scarf to a cold giraffe. Your shirt's on a boat as a sail for a goat. Your shoe is a house for a little white mouse. One of your socks is a bed for a fox. Your belt helped a dog who was crossing a bog. So here's a very fine crown to go with the sandals and gown of the kindest giant in town." The animals made him a thank you card because George is so kind and friendly and nice and helpful. And how is everyone feeling? Really happy. And that's the end of the spiffiest giant in town. Bye, friends. I hope you enjoyed this one. I personally love this story, and I really love all of Julia Donaldson's books for that matter. Bye. I'll read more stories soon. Love you lots.